A second Jewish temple once stood in Egypt. It offered sacrifices to Yahweh. It observed Passover, and the Bible never mentions it. For centuries, historians didn't even know this community existed. Then archaeologists uncovered their letters buried beneath the sands of the Nile, and suddenly, the so-called silent years became very noisy. This is the Restoration Dossier, because the story didn't end when Nehemiah rebuilt Jerusalem. It simply moved into the shadows. Far south of Jerusalem, near Egypt's border with Nubia, sat the island fortress of Elephantine, one of Persia's most important military outposts, and among its soldiers were Jews, families, priests, scribes, entire generations, living hundreds of miles from Jerusalem, part of a thriving community by the 5th century BC. Then, archaeologists uncovered their archives: marriage contracts, military correspondence, property deeds, personal letters, real voices, from a forgotten chapter of biblical history. Then comes the shock. The Jews of Elephantine had their own temple, dedicated to Yahweh, complete with priests and sacrificial practices, which immediately creates a problem, because Deuteronomy repeatedly emphasizes centralized worship in Jerusalem. Had these Jews preserved older traditions the text doesn't record, or had exile and distance forced an adaptation Jerusalem never sanctioned? The evidence remains controversial. But one thing is certain: the post-exilic world was far more complicated than we often imagine. Then disaster struck. Around 410 BC, local Egyptian priests destroyed the Elephantine temple. The Jewish community was devastated. So they wrote letters, petitions, appeals for help to Persian officials, even to Jerusalem itself, and somehow, those cries survived. We can still read them today, 24 centuries later. One document is especially remarkable: the Passover Papyrus, dated to 419 BC. It contains instructions regarding Passover observance, festival timing, unleavened bread, purity requirements. Persian administration appears to have permitted Jewish religious life across its empire. This was different from Assyria, different from Babylon. Persia governed through accommodation rather than assimilation, and because of that, Jewish communities survived. One of the major questions throughout this entire investigation has been, how does covenant identity survive inside powerful empires? That struggle began long before Persia, from Egypt to Sinai, to the conquest of Canaan. The same patterns keep appearing. If you've followed this investigation from Egypt to the Promised Land, and you've wondered how covenant identity kept surviving inside empire after empire, then the Exodus to Conquest Master Dossier is where that case file begins. The Red Sea crossing physics, the real Mount Sinai site, the Jericho destruction layer. Link in the description. Step back and look at the larger pattern. As prophecy faded, diaspora communities multiplied. Scripture became increasingly central. New forms of Jewish identity began emerging. The world was changing. The stage was being prepared. Because when Alexander the Great arrived, he wasn't entering an empty world. He was stepping into a world that had been quietly evolving for centuries. The silent years weren't silent. They were transitional, preparatory, foundational. Another fire was already beginning. The Elephantine Temple wasn't compromise. It was survival proof that covenant identity had learned to endure without a king, without a homeland, even without Jerusalem itself. Sometimes history survives, not in the monuments of kings, but in forgotten letters buried beneath desert sand. The Restoration Dossier is now complete. But the next stage will become even more dangerous. Because a foreign ruler is coming who will attempt something far more aggressive than Babylon ever attempted. Not merely political control, but cultural replacement. His name was Antiochus IV, Epiphanes, and the fires of the Hellenistic age are about to begin. The Maccabean dossier begins next with Antiochus IV, Epiphanes, the blueprint of desolation. The next file is already being prepared.